I was born in a Hindu Brahmin family, born in England, raised up between England and India. I embraced Islam about 23 years ago. I was 15 at the time, 15, 16. My uncle had died in very tragic circumstances around about the age of 15. And in the Hindu tradition, the eldest son has to perform the final funeral rites. So I went there and I had to do a series of rites for my uncle. It kind of struck me that life is, at least the way we think of it, is very impermanent. And the whole idea of death as being so close was something that really, really struck me. And so from the age of about 15, I started looking into what death means in other traditions and the afterlife. And being a Hindu, I looked into my own tradition first, and the whole idea of rebirth and karma and so on was something that I was looking into. And then I started looking into other religions, Judaism, Christianity. And one of the things that I always held on to was that there's lots of different paths. All these religions are fine as long as anyone takes a religion, and they're all reaching to God at the end. Until I came across Islam, and Islam was probably the last possible religion I would have been looking at, partly because in those days, now it's probably 10 times worse, but in those days they had a bit of bad publicity, and I remember reading a couple of Reader's Digest articles, which was the book that often used to have a few things about real life events, and they'd have these real life stories, and they'd often have a bad story of somebody being forced to wear the hijab, or anyway, cut a long story short. When I started looking at Islam, what struck me was it didn't appear what it should have appeared to be. So it wasn't, an Arabian religion 14 centuries ago, one of many other religions. So there's Hinduism, and then you had Judaism, which is kind of the people of Judea, the people of Israel, the tribe, and so on. And Christianity generally centering on the person of Christ and what happened, and the idea of his redemptive sacrifice. But Islam was kind of giving a more broader message. For starters, the Prophet Muhammad, who's, at least to my mind, seemed the founder of Islam, is not mentioned in the Quran apart from 3 times. And the Quran's got a whole chapter on Mary. Well, she's not Arab technically in my mind. And then there's Abraham popping up, and Noah popping up, and Jesus popping up, and what's that got to do with, Arabia at that time? And then a different narrative started emerging. So the first narrative I had was there's lots of different paths, everyone's going to God. And then a different narrative emerged, which is God is one, and the essence of his path of submitting to that oneness is one. And he has been sending different messengers to each and every nation from the beginning of time until now. And that was, Adam was the first. And that religion, for all intents and purposes, in Arabic could be called Islam, or that way could be called Islam, but that is the one path, that is the path of God. And it's broad enough to accommodate these various things. And when I struck that, it was kind of, whoa. But then I've got this message saying, this is it. This is the truth, and this is just the final embodiment. But that truth has been coming from the beginning of time, and it will keep coming, because that truth is the message of the cosmos. That truth is the message that's being shown to you over and over and again. And so then it was a bit of a thing. That doesn't fit the Islam that I'm reading in Reader's Digest, or today they could just say the Islam that you see on television, or the Islam that is constantly being bombarded. It's a deeper Islam. It's the Islam of the soul. It's the Islam that, at some point it's like, I think I know this. And so that process, initially it was a kind of a, how do I debate with this? And I had a couple of friends at school who started to get more into their practice of Islam. And so I used to often debate with them women's rights and, violence in Islam and all my little things. And I was quite good with words, so I found that I would win the arguments, but when I left them and I went home, I would lose the debate. Because at some point I knew that I was winning with points, but there's a deeper level of conviction that had started to rise in my heart about what's being said. And it was just, my life changed after that. But later on I heard that there's that whomsoever Allah wills to guide, he gives them expansion, he expands his chest lil Islam. And then what was really interesting is the next day when I told people I wanted to become Muslim, and I said what I did, the way you become Muslim, it was just a coming home. It's like, oh, this is me. This is a part of me. This is what I've always known somehow, somewhere I should be doing.